I've done my fair share of psychedelics, enough to know the difference between a trip and a nightmare, but nothing I've ever taken or even imagined could touch the visions of Datura. After reading Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Hunter S. Thompson's lawyer spinning that eerie tale about ginseng weed, I knew I had to try it. I wanted another notch on my belt, another strange land visited. But Datura isn't a land, it's a bottomless pit, and once you fall in, there's no telling if you'll climb out the same. I live in a quiet neighborhood, nice, safe, the kind with white picket fences and dogs that bark at nothing. There's a forest behind my house, and when I heard Datura grew wild in the U.S., I decided to go hunting. It didn't take long. There they were, clustered together like a coven, spiky seed pods ready to whisper their secrets. I'd walked past them 100 times, never knowing, never noticing. But now, I saw them for what they were, gateways. I took 3 pods, the strongest part of the plant, or so I'd read. That night, I called my buddy over, told him I had a surprise. When he arrived, his eyes went wide. He knew about Datura too, knew the stories, knew it wasn't like acid or shrooms, knew it was something other. We agreed to take it the next night at his apartment. I still lived with my parents. Bummer. At around 6 o'clock, we got impatient, cracked open the pods, scooped out the seeds. They were pale, not the black mature ones I had read about. For a second, doubt crept in. Maybe it wasn't the right plant. Maybe it wouldn't do a damn thing. But the thought passed. If it was wrong, it wouldn't work. Simple. We crushed the seeds with a mortar and pestle, ground them to dust. A bowl full of the stuff. We each took a teaspoon, downing the bitter grit with water. 5 minutes later, we took another. Didn't feel a thing. Figured we needed more. 25 minutes passed. Something shifted. Not like a come-up. Not like riding the elevator to a peak. No, this was different. Wrong. I lay down. Felt tired. Then I got up. Had to go outside. Had to see the plants. She was waiting for me. The plants were hers. An extension of her life force. She was calling me. My friend stopped me. I remember sitting down instead. Then I remembered something else. A sandwich I left in his fridge, but I hadn't made a sandwich, hadn't put one anywhere. Didn't matter. My mind told me it was real. That was enough. The sky outside was the bluest blue I'd ever seen. Then, dark clouds, lightning, a woman's face forming in the storm. Her, the mother of the plants. She whispered, and I knew, if I didn't go to her, she would take me. I tried to run, and suddenly, I was back on the floor. Time folded. I moved toward the door, but there was no door. Every time I got close, I forgot what I was doing. I was trapped. I looked at my friend. He was lying on the couch, eyes closed. Dead? No, just asleep. But then his hair grew long, his fingernails curled into claws. He was aging, rotting, dying. She was taking him. I tried to scream, but then his eyes snapped open. He was normal again, knocking at the door. My girlfriend, 3 old friends from school, people who had moved away. They shouldn't be here, but there they were, seemed normal. We talked. About what, I couldn't say. I reached for my lighter. My girlfriend had given me a cigarette. I looked up. They were gone. Just gone. The cigarette was still in my hand. Shrugged it off. Tried to light it. The lighter wouldn't work, or I'd forget I was holding it. I reached down to pet my dog. My dog. The one that died when I was 12. That's the last thing I remember. Lying on the floor, wondering if I'd wake up with my soul intact. I did, but I wasn't the same. My vision was wrecked for a week. The world felt off, like reality had been slightly nudged out of alignment. My friend told me he had never been asleep. That was the worst part. He had been awake the whole time. Datura isn't for the curious. It isn't for the thrill seekers. It's for those who want to look into the abyss and see something looking back. And if you're not careful, it just might take you with it. Dose: 800 to 850 Datura Inoxa seeds. Time until trip: approximate 20 minutes total trip length. Approximate 28 hours most memorable effect. God feeling other effects. Severe distortion of time perception, memory loss, pain when memories return, mental confusion, stupidity, slightly itchy throat, extreme mydriasis, dilated pupils, horrid boredom, stimulating effect, trouble reading. This wasn't my first time with Datura. My friends had taken it plenty, and the doses that twisted their minds into knots barely touched me. One night, I came home feeling hollow, dead inside. I didn't care anymore. I'd read about how high doses could kill, but since it had never worked for me before, I figured, why not? I had a handful of seeds left. Might as well take them all. I started a journal before I dosed, marked the time, wrote down what I did. Maybe I'd managed to capture something in the madness. No other precautions. Didn't see the point. At 3:40 p.m., I began eating the seeds, chewed them raw, sucked them dry, swallowed. The taste was revolting, bitter and foul, but I kept going. By 3:55, I was done. More than 800 seeds, far beyond my usual 80 to 120. I sat in my room, stomach churning. The taste lingered while rising. 10 minutes passed, 20. Then I got up, went to the bathroom. That was the last thing I remembered for 4 hours. The next thing I knew, I was standing in my kitchen drenched, wearing nothing but underwear, ranting about syrup packets needing to go in the freezer immediately. The night unraveled in pieces, fragments, shadows of things that might have happened. I walked the halls, talking to people who weren't there. My tuxedo floated across my room, then twisted into a grotesque, disembodied head. Time stretched and collapsed. I'd sit on my bed for what felt like 40 minutes, only to realize it had been 5. Bored, so bored. Up again, wandering, reality splintered. I blinked, and I was at school, half naked, going through the motions of a normal day. I snapped back. My room again. This loop continued until exhaustion finally crushed me. I passed out around 4:30 a.m. How did it feel? Like shifting between two worlds. One real, one less so. I wasn't afraid of doing something stupid because every sharp noise, every sudden movement snapped me back. I only hallucinated when no one real spoke to me, but conversation was difficult. Unless someone forced me back, I'd just sit there, mouth open, staring. The other world felt wrong, distant, muted. My senses weren't working right. I heard things, but it didn't feel like hearing. I saw things, but it didn't feel like seeing. Something was missing, something huge. I felt dead. The second day was different. The worst had passed. I stepped outside, drawn by something unseen. And then, a voice. My own, but not mine. It spoke in my head, whispering secrets of the universe. Everything I saw, I had created. The world existed because I willed it to exist. Reality was an illusion, shaped by my thoughts. If I changed my thoughts, I could change the world. Bend it, twist it, control it. The power was intoxicating, but beneath it lurked an unbearable emptiness. If everything was an illusion, what was the point? If I controlled fate, why bother with life? But I didn't want to die. Not anymore. The rest of the day, I talked to people who weren't there. At least now, I knew they weren't real. The seeds had left me wired, but exhaustion gnawed at my bones. 2 or 3 days later, the memories came back. Flashes, bursts of forgotten horrors. Those lost 4 hours slammed into me like a freight train. Images flickering in and out. Too fast, too slow, distorted and sickening. My head throbbed. My stomach lurched. I felt wrong all over again. In the end, it wasn't the worst trip. Wasn't the best either. I walked away. But my friend, he ended up hospitalized from 300 seeds off the same plant. Datura doesn't care who you are. It doesn't play fair, and it never forgets.